of the Indiana Commission for Higher Education to order. Mr. Secretary, if I may, as you're looking for your list, is that right?
Yes, I was. Is it? Hold on just a second.
Here, you can use mine. Call the order, please.
Okay. Jerry Bebko. Here. Dennis Bland.
Present.
John Conant.
Present.
John Costas.
Present.
Susana Duarte Suarez.
Present.
De Suarez, excuse me. Judd Fisher, not here. Lisa Hirschman. Al Hubbard. Chris Lamoth is here. Mika Mosier.
Here.
Chris Murphy.
Here.
Dan Peterson.
Here.
John Pop.
Here.
Karen Whitehouse.
Present.
We have a quorum. Come on.
I need my notes back.
Oh. I was marking it for you so that we have.
I am able to speak contemporaneously, but I don't want to get in trouble.
Exhibit, yeah.
Maybe I can't. And contemporaneous. Nuclear. So, welcome again, and first order of business is to really thank our hosts and friends here at Purdue University for having us. What a wonderful opportunity to be here on campus. Wonderful tour yesterday, delicious dinner, wonderful entertainment last night by 3 of the Purduettes, which was fantastic. I know we all enjoyed that very much. And especially thankful to the Board of Trustees members who were able to join us for breakfast this morning. All of this at a time when you've got Board of Trustees meetings and homecoming, so we really appreciate all the hard work and effort to support our visit. Last month we announced that the Student Advocates Conference was going to take place again this year. This year it's going to be on December 1st and 2nd in Indianapolis. Registration for that event is now on the website, and we're also accepting proposals for breakout sessions, and that process will begin reviewing of those applications for proposals, on October 14th. This process will continue until the time that all sessions are filled. Additionally, we also want to get on everyone's calendar this coming year's Kent Weldon Conference for higher education, which is set for April 4th. The conference will be held at the Marriott North, as it has been in recent years, and it looks to be another great event, and we really encourage everyone to attend. That's it from my perspective. I will turn it over to Commissioner Lubbers for her comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back at Purdue. I wanted to pay attention to the fact that we have some legislators in the audience with us here today. I know Representative Brown is here and Representative Sullivan, and I think that Senator Hirschman was here earlier, and actually Sheila Klinker, Representative Klinker. So thank you for joining us today. We hope that you will find this well worth your time. We know it's worth our time to have you here with us. I wanted to begin by letting the members of the commission know that we have some more good news about our former chairman, Dennis Bland. Some of you may know that on September 17th, he was honored at a Salute to African American Men as one of the 4 honorees for the inaugural event. There's been one of these events that was held in Cincinnati, I think, and they've been doing it there since 2010. This was the first time in Indiana. It was founded to basically honor African American men who have succeeded against all odds and achieved special greatness. We certainly know that's true about Dennis. And each person who received the honor was allowed to name an organization of his choice to receive a grant. Dennis chose Young Men, Inc., which is led by the Reverend Malachi Walker, as his recipient. So we wanted to take a moment to congratulate Dennis on this most recent honor, and thank you for being with us here again today. Thank you, Dennis. As you will recall, the legislature charged the Commission for Higher Education to develop and market a campaign for high-performing high school students who would be interested in going into the profession of teaching. Those of you who serve on Karen Whitehouse's committee yesterday heard some more about this, but we thought it was important enough that we bring it to the attention to the remainder of the commission as well. This is called the Next Generation Teacher Scholarship. It was the brainchild of Speaker of the House, Brian Bosma. really focused on two goals. One, to identify students who were high performing in their high schools and to get them to actually think about going into education and to know that they would have some financial ability to cover their costs, up to $7,500 a year. But also an opportunity to market this idea in a broader way to lift up the prestige of the teaching profession. So we've been hard at work doing this. In particular, I would cite Josh Garrison and Zach Smith at our office. They've been really overseeing this work, looking at how other states have been doing this, looking at the pitfalls in other states, because you have a public service component. You have to pay back a certain number of years, and often this does not work. And so we've been looking at ways, how can we make sure that this is more likely to be successful? I really think that the rollout has been received in a very positive way. We've stayed in close contact with the speaker's office. We've reached out to education groups as well. We started a marketing campaign on October 1st. The video, which we're going to show you in just a moment, has had over 22,000 views on YouTube in less than a week. So I think that's really encouraging, and we're complementing that with television, radio, and digital ads running throughout the month. The application process actually begins on November 1st and closes December 31st. And we wanted to take just a moment to have you see this very short video, and I'd like to ask that you run it twice because it goes by so quickly.
Remember your favorite teacher? The one who made learning fun? The one who inspired? The one who made a difference? That's the kind of teacher I want to be. And that's why I'm glad Indiana offers the Next Generation Teacher Scholarship. It pays $7,500 per year for up to 4 years to the next generation of teachers who will commit to teaching in Indiana after graduation. Are you ready to make a difference? Apply at learnmoreindiana.org. Remember your favorite teacher? The one who made learning fun? The one who inspired? The one who made a difference? That's the kind of teacher I want to be. And that's why I'm glad Indiana offers the Next Generation Teacher Scholarship. It pays $7,500 per year for up to 4 years to the next generation of teachers who will commit to teaching in Indiana after graduation. Are you ready to make a difference? Apply at learnmoreindiana.org.
So we've been working with the Broadcasters Association of the state. They've given us a lot of good placement for these ads, which we wouldn't be able to afford on our own. So we think you're going to see evidence of this campaign going forward, and we're very hopeful for the results. We'll be having those first group in the fall of 2017. Another interesting data point that I'd like to point out to you is some of you may be familiar that for the first time the federal government is allowing students and families to use the prior tax returns as they fill out their FAFSA. This will allow them to have information earlier about the availability of financial aid. We've actually seen nearly 10,000 applications filed the first week of the FAFSA being open, which is, I think, very encouraging as well, and will really allow for early college application filing for students. Another bit of good news, earlier this week we announced a partnership with Amazon and Indiana Internet that will provide up to 100 paid internships for low-income Hoosiers. This is the largest corporate commitment we've seen of paid internships for our Earn Indiana program, and we think really aligns perfectly with the career section of our Reaching Higher, Delivering Value strategic plan. Finally, since we're here at Purdue, in addition to the good news we shared with you at the working session this morning about the Gear Up grant, I wanted to highlight another good news Purdue story. Recently learned that student parent borrowing at Purdue is down 30% since 2012. That's a drop of $55 million.
That's amazing. Wow. That was an excellent report. Thank you very much, Teresa. Fantastic news on all fronts. So,
You do that again.
yeah,
Good.
it went so fast. And really appreciated the video as well. Next up on the agenda, we do need to approve September 8th commission meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Second. Any conversation or comments, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same? All right. Thank you very much. The majority of our meeting today will be taken up by 3 budget presentations that we'll be hearing from 3 of the institutions, Purdue University with President Daniels here first up, followed by Ball State University with Interim President Terry King, and third, Ivy Tech Community College with President Sue Ellspermann. So at this point, we'd love to welcome President Daniels to the podium for his welcoming remarks and the Purdue presentation. And again, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for your hospitality and involvement.
Not to contradict the chairman, but I'm here to welcome you and all our other guests from our sister schools and the legislature and elsewhere. It's always a privilege to have you here, and we, of course, very much value the opportunity to tell you a little more about developments here at Purdue University and where we hope we're going. We ask two questions here every day and all the time, and they are, how do we add value to the students that are in our trust, and how do we add value to the state of Indiana? And our efforts have achieved some occasional recognition. This is the most recent, in which a new analysis by the Wall Street Journal found us the fourth most valuable, fourth leading public university in the country, tied with Cal Berkeley.
Wow.
And so by definition, this is the superior methodology and way of rating public schools. We're coming. I want to say a word or two about our new class and the year we've embarked on. In so many respects, we've hit new highs we're very pleased about. Again, a big surge of applicants, a record number of 48,000 young people applied to Purdue University this year. We accepted 900 more freshmen. There are 10% more Hoosiers. I'll show you that further in just a second. Big gain in underrepresented minorities. Very much by design, we have somewhat fewer international students. We're still one of the most diverse campuses in terms of international students. But from a peak of 17% of the entering class 3 or 4 years ago, we felt for various reasons that we wanted to try to steer that down. It's about 13% of the new class. Within that, by the way, we've worked hard and succeeded in seeing a shift and a more variety among the countries represented. And so whereas one country, China, represented half of the incoming international freshmen just a few years ago, it's down to a third in this class. And so on both those fronts, we achieved some goals that we thought were important. And yet again, which has now become very customary, the Purdue entering class has a dramatically higher academic profile than any other public school in the state. Here are the numbers on Hoosiers. This is the most Indiana students since 2009 at Purdue, and you can see the rather marked increase off a trough back in 2014. And I can't tell you how pleased we are with the great work so many folks here combined to produce this result. Records in every category with regard to underrepresented minorities, minority students overall, first generation, any way you cut it. This is the most diverse entering class in Purdue history, and we now have the most diverse student body in Purdue history. But both, like I said before I leave that, you see at the bottom, both by percent and by number, these categories are the highest they've ever been here. Did not come easily. No one knows better than this commission how difficult this is, how small the universe still is of such students that are ready for college work or ready for college work here. But we're very thrilled at the at this, and now the goal, of course, is to make sure that we achieve it year on year and don't. It's not just a one-time aberration. The commission has fastened the attention of everyone who wasn't already paying attention to the paramount importance of student success, and here's the Purdue track record. Again, all categories up rather sharply. 4-year graduation rates, and you all understand the asterisk that has to go on this. You don't get to count transfers in or out. We think it adds 10 or 12% to this number if you did count them. But using the conventional measure, up to 56% for the class that entered in 2012. Please note that The slope is even sharper for URM and African American students. We've got to keep those lines moving up at least that rate. But there is real progress and the gaps are closing. Up in the corner, I just put this here just so you know, this is a slogan coined 2 or 3 years ago by our students, which we've now embraced and we repeat often. And what it means is resolve to graduate in 4 years, maintain a 3.0 GPA, which is hard to do at Purdue University. I'll show you that some other time. And study at least 2 hours for every hour of class, and embrace or accept at least one activity, one leadership responsibility during any year you're on campus. We think that's a pretty good set of objectives for a Purdue education, and again, it was student initiated, but one I think it is worth repeating. This is retention of underrepresented students, and in a set of data that we can take so much heart from, here is, to me, the single biggest stunner, which is that not only did we improve first to second year retention across the board, but with URMs, have we improved it, but with African Americans at 92.2%, our African American freshmen retained at a higher rate than the rest of their class. And that we would not have anticipated. And maybe there's another school somewhere that's had that result, but we haven't found them yet. So can that be replicated? Can we maintain or even get better than that? We're going to try. But I think of all the data points that I could show you, there's none that we feel is more heartening than this one. And now we just have to make sure it's a pattern and not a blip. You know that we believe in accountability and here and participated in creating the Gallup Purdue Index. We thank the commission, by the way, for making that vehicle available to other schools in the state, and commend those that chose to take a close look at their own graduates and see what could be learned. We were very pleased that Gallup came back with data showing how really very, very well Purdue alums do in the world. But that wasn't the real reason we did it. We did it to try to learn how to become better at what we're doing these days. And here's an example. We learned several important lessons, but perhaps the most emphatic was that personal attention by faculty can be the single biggest tiebreaker, biggest factor distinguishing a great college education from a merely good one. And so we brought that back to campus. We know that our faculty have always invested time and effort in the coaching and mentoring of our students, but we wanted to formalize it. And led by our Board of Trustees, this was added to the draft that our faculty had produced of a new tenure and promotion policy. So the official, to achieve tenure and promotion at Purdue University going forward, a candidate will have to show that in addition to research and publications and those things, they will have to show proof that they mentored or otherwise personally invested of themselves in the intellectual growth of the students under their care. We've been trying to make sure our resources are spent on the things that matter most, and we've got a long way to go. I just come from a trustees meeting. We're talking about we've still got a lot of antiquated systems and practices and business processes here. But the arrows are in the right direction, so staff down, faculty up. When we benchmark against other universities, we have a much larger number of faculty relative to our student body than most, and that faculty is more heavily a tenure track. 72% of our faculty are tenure track, so we're not doing it on the cheap. A lot of schools, when you look one level deep, you find out that they more and more of their faculty are clinical or are limited term lecturers. Not so here. Our faculty is at now the largest it's ever been in Purdue history. The commission knows that one way we think we can improve our performance, our graduation rates, certainly the efficiency of the utilization of our capital plant is to not go dark all summer. And so we've been working on this, both students and credit hours up 30% the last 3 years in terms of summer activity. And part of that improvement, something I'll return to at the end here, that we think is extraordinarily important, not just from a capacity utilization standpoint, but from a progress, retention, student success standpoint, is using the summer in new and creative ways. Summer start this year, first time, 180 students, heavily Indiana, heavily URM and first-generation students who were admitted provisionally, contingent on their coming here and taking 7 credit hours to give them a running head start. And the first couple of those credit hours were about how to be a successful college student. We are very hopeful about this program. And we'll be tracking, of course, very carefully to see if it has the results we hoped for. But it was certainly an important part of achieving that more diverse class, and we hope is going to prove to be an important part of even better graduation rates and so forth in the future. Summer Stay is a program to incentivize students, more students, to be on campus in the summer, also very heavily taken up by Hoosiers. And we would like to start a new program, we plan to start a new program next year called Summer Finish, and this is to get students across the finish line by making it more attractive if they're close to a degree to polish it off in the summer. Another way we think we can promote student success is by more on-campus living. The data is very clear that those students who live on a college campus do better. It makes common sense after all. Particularly when here at Purdue, such a high percentage of our students, it grows every year, accept our invitation to live in learning communities. It might be a whole floor in which students are studying chemical engineering, or it might be one of our co-ops. But the point is that we know that in almost any mode, those students who live on a campus progress more surely and graduate at higher rates. And so we've been working on this. We've got more big plans, but when you add our co-ops and our Greek housing, a majority of our undergraduates now are living on campus. And the evidence tells us that this has just got to turn into better success rates over time. We are Indiana's STEM university. Part of our original assignment. It's one that in this era, the knowledge, the information economy, we think has never been so important. And I think the commission knows we've been investing heavily at Purdue in a variety of ways that will make us even more STEM focused than we have historically been. So the growth of our engineering college, which will ultimately involve 107 net new faculty, we're almost there. Demand for Purdue engineering education is incredibly strong, and we've exceeded already what was a 5-year growth target. We've exceeded it in 3. Likewise for computer science. And our Polytechnic Institute, which has been totally transforming itself into a competency-based model that parallels the world of work, attracting a lot of national attention, is well on its way to its growth target. By the way, when you see these numbers, they do not include the cross-disciplinary program of agricultural and biological engineering, ABE, which again this year, I've lost count, 6th or 7th year in a row, was ranked #1 in the world.
Wow.
This is the percentage of our graduates in a STEM discipline. It's rising rather swiftly. In our freshman class, 60% of the entering freshmen indicate that they intend to pursue a STEM degree. So this was very purposeful on our part. I hope it will look wise 10 and 20 and 30 years from now. Yes, we are becoming even more concentrated in this area, but I think we've discussed with the commission before. Number one, it is consistent with our land grant mission. Number two, I think it meets the needs of the state and the nation in a meaningful way. I love to point out that the Augustine Commission of a few years ago said America needs 10,000 more engineers a year. Our growth alone will provide the first 7% of that. And when it's over, we will be, we were already, when we embarked on this, the third most STEM-centric university, public university, behind Georgia Tech and UC San Diego. And we'll probably be at least closer to them. Again, is a carefully thought decision. We discussed it with the board, but we think this is the way to, this is an important way we can fulfill our responsibility at the state and country. And you know, besides, do more of what you're good at is a reasonable principle in business or anywhere else. So here's a little more about the former College of Technology. Now, because they've changed in so many ways, they decided they ought to have a new name also. And the Purdue Polytechnic Institute is attracting attention far from here as the first competency-based degree program anywhere at the scale of an entire college. And we are running ahead of our planned growth at 750 new freshmen this fall. You see a list there on the bottom right of some of the new majors. The whole college is designed to be hands-on, project-based from the freshman year on to more closely resemble the world of work as businesses and employers who recruit on this campus describe it to us. And the concentrations, like those 5 there, that a student can choose from, but we intend to be flexible over time as the economy evolves and maybe new industries begin to emerge. It'll be easy for this college to adapt to that and begin offering special education in those areas. And as you may well have heard, as if that weren't ambitious enough, our colleagues there have agreed to try something we think is enormously important, and that is the opening of a high school designed to pretty closely parallel the curriculum, project-based, team-taught, hands-on that I just described at the high school level. And we'll open next year in downtown Indianapolis, 150 students per year, a goal of 600 in just 3 more years. And we're very explicit about our reasons for this. Last year, there were, in a school district of 29,000 in the Indianapolis public schools, Purdue was able to admit 26 students, and only 12 of them showed up. And we cannot be the university we aspire to be if we can't find more students in the largest concentration of low income and minorities in our state than that. So we're going to try to build our own pipeline. The dream here is that 4 years from now, when the first students walk across a stage, the first degrees from this high school, inside the diploma is an admission to Purdue University. And the reason the map is there is because the Polytechnic Institute already has tech centers in those communities that are marked on the map. And so just to get way ahead of ourselves, if we're able to make this project work in one place, ideally one day we would be able to offer this opportunity to similar students in many other parts of Indiana. And I've said it so often, we're trying a lot of new things around here. We hope that's what you want us to do. When you do that, you accept the fact that they may not all work just as you hope. This one has to work, as I keep telling the people responsible. So we will give it all the attention we can in hopes that we can succeed with it. In this day and age, it's now I think pretty much a commonplace to recognize that there is no driver of an economy, certainly a regional economy or local economy, than a first-rate research university. There's a new book called The Smartest Places on Earth. The author was here a week or two ago. He was just bowled over, he said, by what he saw at Purdue in terms of everything he wrote the book about, which is the value that research does, particularly if it is translated, if it doesn't stay academic, if it is encouraged, if the people doing the work are encouraged to turn it into real-world goods and services and companies. And you're, I think, familiar with how much we've been doing here. I've shown you before, but you can see from 2 to 5 times as many licenses and new companies and so forth as 3 years ago. We relish the idea that we can be a major contributor directly to the Indiana economy, in addition to producing graduates who then go out and build a better future. Yes, we care about affordability at Purdue. Value, I skipped it on the first slide, but it's so obvious to this commission. Quality, that I just talked about, it creates more value when it's in an affordable price. And here's the denominator. As you know, we're in the 4th year of what we have pledged will be at least 5 years without a tuition increase. We've reduced the cost of the next 2 or 3 items on a student's cost structure, and all in nominal dollars, it's less expensive to go to Purdue than it was in 2013. Somewhere out there may be another university can say that, but we don't know who it is. I just wanted to show you that, quickly, this is room and board, which we've stepped down by roughly, certainly on the food side, by 5% twice, and constrained all our housing packages. Ignore the numbers, but you can see that in 2013, we were the 2nd most expensive in the Big Ten. If you drop down to 2017, in the bottom middle there, we're down to 11th. So tuition gets a lot of attention, but people have begun to see that you better also look at other fees, of which we have very few here, and at these other costs, which are, you know, a dollar's a dollar. Here's a couple ways to measure that. If we had simply gone up at the average rate, the rate that has prevailed in other public universities here in other states, tuition and fees would be something like more than $1,000 more. The way I like to think about it is our families would have paid us $226 million more. That's money they still have. And Teresa mentioned this already, but here are the numbers that she's exactly right. From a peak in 2012, 183 million, we are down $55 million in total debt held by our undergraduates right now. That's exactly 30%. And you can see the average debt per student coming down in parallel with it. We're still working on this. Obviously, the best way to get debt down is not charge so much in the first place. But we, of course, we're aggressively working to raise funds for scholarships and tuition assistance, but we also, as you may know, have experimented with another new idea, the income share agreement, which is maybe thought of as financing a college education with equity instead of debt. The risk is entirely shifted from the student to the investor, who is willing to take the chance that the graduate will be able to pay back a negotiated amount for a negotiated number of years. And so that this is the first in the nation. When the 150 contracts are in place, it's about 10% of the audience we targeted with this, which was really targeted at those students who were otherwise going to take out the very expensive private and plus loans, parental loans, basically. About 10% of those students chose this instead, and it represents total about $2 million, which will not be borrowed now. So those debt figures you saw will come down by virtue of this another couple of clicks. Some people thought, by the way, that no one would invest in anybody but a sure thing, like an electrical engineer. Now, almost every major study area that we have is represented in these 150, and that's exactly the way it was meant to be. Now, I've told you a lot of good news. I want to mention a couple things that are cautions. We've got to get better with regard to our regional responsibilities. And we've taken a couple steps. As you know, as of this July 1, the 5th biggest public university in Indiana is the new Purdue Northwest. We still have 2 campuses, about 35 miles apart, but one administration. And it's saving $1.1 million in the first year, and a number that will not just recur but compound. Money that can go to keeping the tuition down, and money that's already been invested in new faculty and student support. We have over at Fort Wayne, on the other hand, we have a different issue. We have a big mismatch there. We've had declining enrollments. I'll show you that in just a second. These are just some examples where one can wish that more students were interested in these subjects, but these are the facts. And so the provost and the chancellor there are at work on this. We've got to get that campus more right-sized. And this is, they've had a lengthy process that has produced data that really points the way towards some of that right-sizing. So here, I'll just show you that at Northwest, we've had stagnant enrollment. We are, however, they are balancing their budget. Fort Wayne, we've had declining enrollment, and the budget is out of balance. So we're working on that. Both campuses need attention and need to do better. I don't need to tell you that quite apart from all this, the graduation rates are way too low at these places, and so that's the end objective. But I just wanted to be direct with you and say we recognize these issues, and they're being worked on. So let me finish by telling you where you and our friends in the legislature could come in if you'd like to. So I allowed this euphemism about partnering to stay on the slide, but what it really means is here's what you could do to help. It's an interesting thing. I think it's interesting to look back. Funding this is West Lafayette. Funding has not yet gotten back to where it was in 2007 to 2009. And even if the legislature were to favor us with a couple new line items, which I'm about to mention, we would not get back to that level and would barely be at the level of the intervening years. So what we have, well, here's another way to look at it. If you look at it at Purdue West Lafayette's share of the total state funding, it's been dropping from 21% in 2007 to 18% today. We'd like to suggest that this place I've just surveyed for you is worth something more in terms of the state's investment. Here are the suggestions we make. We would like the state to join us in the growth of those STEM disciplines that I summarized for you a few slides back. And in particular, we think this would be in the state's interest to help us bring in and get out successfully more Hoosier students through the summer start, stay, and finish programs. We recognize any new idea, any new suggestion like that will take a lot of thought. But I've said to you before that we believe Purdue University is and is becoming more so every day exactly that university that every state wants. If Indiana didn't have Purdue University, it'd be trying to invent it right now. And so we think it's a little ironic that we're not at least keeping up in terms of our share of the state's overall commitment to higher ed with our brethren elsewhere. Each biennium, of course, we bring a set of capital requests. This is a primary one, so I wanted to mention it here today. That ABE program that I mentioned, number one in the world, it's 8 years, excuse me, consecutive years, is scattered. The map shows you the various buildings, many of them quite antique, across which this best in the world program is scattered. And we really need to address this at some point. The growth, the demand for the program is really strong, and it is really time that we had a home for it that is suitable to its number one ranking, or we won't stay there. So that, Mr. Chairman, is the Purdue story, and again, we thank you for being here, and of course for the chance to tell you what we're up to.
Great, thank you very much, wonderful. Comments, questions?
Yeah.
Questions for President Daniels, comments? Certainly a very good overall presentation. Jerry?
In the presentation, you had a frame that suggested that the amount of state appropriation for Purdue is declining over the last 6 years or so. Yet enrollments have increased. So would the per capita appropriation be reducing by an even greater percentage?
It would be less. I mean, it is fair to say that enrollment was flat or even slightly down in some of those years, but not enough to explain the facts I showed you. And yes, we now have the largest student body on campus we've ever had, close to 31,000, very much by design. So absolutely, the denominator got bigger, and if you were to look at it that way, we would be well down from the previous years.
I do think that you'll see a little change going forward when you looked at the demographics with the reduction of the international students compared to the residential students, and with, of course, performance funding going to Hoosier students. I think that balance may shift some in the future.
Yeah, and we're not here to quarrel with the formula or anything like it. It does have a long lead time, of course, so this new enrollment philosophy that we brought will take years to show up. That's the fact of life, and we're not arguing with it. But still, when you just step back from the overall picture, it does seem anomalous, and I won't say more than that.
Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, John.
We got a lot of Johns on this committee. Well, I just want to say I appreciate your taking the position of freezing tuition. I think it was kind of certainly a groundbreaking idea, and you can't really ask the universities to cut tuition, but to freeze it is, I think, something that is possible, and I congratulate you for doing that.
Well, John, thank you. Obviously, the trustees thought it was the right and appropriate thing to do. I have to tell you, I think it's working out rather well. When we survey those 48,000 young people who applied to Purdue this year, which is up, almost 100% from a few years ago, why they were interested. Or we surveyed those who were coming, why they chose Purdue. Academic reputation and our commitment to affordability are tied for number one. So it has, I don't know why it should be surprising, I guess, but even we are surprised that it is certainly caught the attention of people in a positive way, and maybe at this point a point of differentiation for us compared to many other places.
You'll share those slides with us?
Huh?
You'll share those slides with us?
Sure. Good for you.
The Polytechnic High School is a tremendous development, helping the state solve some of the challenges, in the urban areas. So I'm excited to see that take shape. Will that be fairly self-sustaining financially, or will you have to allocate a lot of resources?
Yeah, well, we sure hope so, Mayor. It'll be a charter school under, I think, a very creative act of the legislature. It's called an innovation school. And so a contractor, an agreement has been worked out with the city of Indianapolis, or the Indianapolis Public Schools, rather, which does provide most of the dollars that any other public school would receive. And as you may know, in exchange, the school district gets to use the results, which we hope will be very good, and contribute to better overall results for the district. We're going to have to certainly raise some money. We've asked Purdue, I put out a request to Purdue grads. After all, Boilermakers build a lot of things, and I've said, you know, we need construction work and painters and everything else. We may get a little in-kind, have a little barn racing out there at the old Mallory building. But absolutely, the goal has to be, this thing has to stand on its own financial feet at some point. And on the projections that we have, it would in about the third or fourth year, but you know how conjectural those things are.
I have a question.
Micah?
Again, like John, I would like to commend you on the Polytechnic High School. I think that is an amazing opportunity for a lot of these children in the urban areas and things like that. And I know that your plan is to spread it across the state, correct?
Well, that's
If
sure
it
that,
works. If it works.
that's certainly the hope.
So my question then goes to that. You're wanting to automatically enroll these students into Purdue. That's the goal. How is that going to affect the number of students that you're able to accept from outside of those high schools?
Well, I don't think it should affect it. I don't think it should affect it, Micah, because, again, we're trying to be additive here. We are looking to add to the number of students from that district that make it here. And we'll work just as hard to recruit students from every other high school in IPS or every similar district elsewhere. You know, just because we've hit these record levels of first generation and so forth, or URM students, we're not where we want to be yet. So
I was trying to think of how the infrastructure that you have here will support, you know, what kind of plans you have to expand as necessary
yeah.
to be able to accept those numbers.
Well, we very well may. I mean, we are, you know, here's something I just held this in reserve, but this goes to a couple of points. There's a new trend, we didn't invent this term, of innovation districts. It's a new phenomenon. It started up in various places around the country. What it refers to is a place adjacent to a university just like ours, a Tier 1 research university, in which it is hoped that you can recruit people to live and to work. And it would, so we look at it, you see our airport down there at the bottom. This district has been designated by the state, and we do have room to grow. And one of the first things that's, one of the first elements of growth will be new housing, additional housing. Now, I'm hoping, back to an earlier slide, this will push that percentage of on-campus students up further. But it will give us more housing than we have today, and in theory, that 31,000 could creep up a little bit. But, you know, the Rolls-Royce has already become our first tenant of this park. There's some very interesting conversations going on right now. It's like going back to my last life. We're in the economic development business again. And we imagine that in a few years, Indiana may be host to some very interesting companies who see a great opportunity to site in a place that is good for business in this first place, but has these assets, a 7,000-foot runway, rail and interstate access, and is on the, literally on the edge of a research university with the students and the talent that produces and the research they could access there. That's the plan.
President Daniels, I want to probably join my colleagues in commending you on a laser focus on a multiple of higher education issues, including cost, that are being addressed in, frankly, both innovative and pragmatic ways. I'm encouraged by your comments that this will extend out to the regional campuses as well. I think that's important. If you go to the last slide that has your formula on it, it'll be no surprise to my colleagues that I really like the word quality that you have there, because there's no question higher education is under pressure. I mean, you know, we've got to get our costs down and aligned. We've got to make higher education accessible and affordable. We've got to move kids through in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on. I think one of the biggest challenges is how to do all of that and maintain, if not actually improve quality. And I think there's not enough dialogue around that, and I just wanted to comment that as Purdue moves down this path, I think the top line is absolutely critical. You've mentioned it is to the reputation of Purdue. And I think the collaboration I'm hoping to see with our higher education partners around quality and how to measure it and how to manage it is as critical as the cost issue. And so I appreciate that.
Amen. I mean, that's why the whole front of the conversation was all about quality, and I got to affordability at the end. You're exactly right. It wouldn't do us any good or any real good just to hold down the cost of Purdue education if it wasn't a good education.
Right.
You know, I remember John Silver a long time ago said we can have lousy education for a lot less money. Now, he was talking about K-12, but he could have been talking about too much of higher ed today. So, yes, we've been investing. I mean, again, the faculty here is larger than it's ever been. There are more tenure track, that is, full professors and I mean, I should say, more than part-time professors than a higher percentage than almost any school in the country. And we are making these major investments. I hope we have learned some things from the Gallup, Purdue, and elsewhere that are enhancing the quality of that education. Again, it's not enough that a higher percentage of students leave with a piece of paper. That piece of paper has to be really meaningful and valuable. We think we can prove a Purdue diploma is, but, you know, we want tomorrow to be better.
Hi, President Daniels. Again, congratulations on a great presentation, and more importantly, on the results we've been seeing here. I shared with some of my colleagues earlier, my 5-year-old announced that she was going to be a Purdue engineer. So I think you're sowing the
We have
seeds
an early
early.
admission program.
Then you broke your leg.
Yeah, no, that's a different story. But one of the questions I have is, we saw some very interesting data earlier today about how we are not retaining a lot of the graduates in our state that are coming out of our colleges and universities. And most of the discussion we've had so far is about undergrads and them reaching and acquiring their degrees. We haven't really talked about graduate degrees and the efforts that you all are undertaking to retain some of that talent in the state. And I was wondering if you could address that, please.
Well, it's really an economic development question. You know, I think it's not a new one. I do think, from at least fragments I've seen, there's some very promising developments. I've been looking for something more recent, but in 2012, the Census Bureau found that more college graduates moved into Indiana than moved out. And again, we need that to be a pattern over a long time, because for a long time the pattern was the reverse. And I don't know, but I hope. Another thing is, we all count and see personally and feel the so-called drain, but we don't notice the gain. Best surveys we have say that about 15% of our out-of-state students take their first job in Indiana. They're not visible. You know, we don't live next door to their parents. But there's some brilliant folks. I'll tell you what, the growth in the life sciences, the growth in the IT community around Indy, and the growth that's happening around here, around this campus, and startups and so forth, are picking up a lot of brilliant people who came to Purdue from somewhere else. And if we get smarter about visa policy in this country, I promise you that some of our international students would love to stick around, but we run too many of them off because of national decisions. So all that's in the mix. But you can bet it's really on our mind all the time. I will tell you, and we all know this, a lot of students leave our university, take a first job elsewhere, and find their way back with a lot of great work experience and so forth. And so there's that. But it's always on our mind that if we can become an economic engine, as I was suggesting we're trying to do, that we can lean against this problem that does bother us all.
You know, I might ask a quick follow-up to your question and your response, President Daniels. I think that last point about the fact that we do have young people that get their degrees in Indiana, go off and do something. And I think it's laudable that we try and keep more in Indiana, but it's inevitable that a lot of these young kids who've been born and raised in Indiana want to try something different and go off and do that, and that's good for a lot of them. The key is being able to bring them back. And I believe you guys had some stuff you were doing to try and reach out to former Indiana-based
Yeah, we did.
students to bring them back. And I've always thought that if there's lessons learned there, that all of our universities and colleges should attempt to do more with that and not lose track of them over a more extended period of time, and try and hit them when they're kind of in that age when they're likely to come back home, in a sense, to raise children, et cetera.
I've been an optimist for a very, very long time that if Indiana can build the right kind of climate and the right kind of economy, it's not that that most of these young people wouldn't love to live here. Many of them just find better economic opportunity elsewhere. The minute they see there's a career and a life of the kind they're interested in, there's a lot of interest in coming back. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the great presentation. As you think about the different issues and topics which you, which you have presented here today, would you speak to us about those issues within the context of, the broader context of leadership? Meaning, as you think about these issues, what do you see statewide? What do you see nationally that then has you as a leader excited or concerned or worried or having some trepidation? So put all this that you have presented within the context of leadership and the things you have to be concerned about and the things we need to be thinking about based upon your perch and just what you see.
I hope it's responsive, Dennis. I mean, if, on another day, I would maybe talk to you about the fact that so much of what we're doing here may take us down a dead end. I don't know. You know, the technology of learning is rocketing ahead. Even at a high-tech place like this, it's hard to keep up with what people are doing. And as you know, there are a lot of people who believe this entire residential mode will be outmoded at some point, and that high-quality education will be available very inexpensively in the comfort of your own home or in some remote fashion. That's one. I also worry that large segments of the employer of the economy will decide that the college diploma is no longer a sufficient proxy for the talent they're looking for, and will start, and they're already doing it, start devising their own methods of testing and credentialing people. Amazon University, for instance, already conferring certificates that other businesses are willing to honor. So I think we're in a race to do this, to prove in the institutions like this one that we can add value that cannot be delivered in some other way. And that'll have everything to do with the personal engagement with faculty and hands-on learning and working in groups and teams like in the Polytechnic Institute, and in undergraduate research, as we know, is another enormously enhancing experience. But I think we've got to race on the quality line, and I hope Purdue can show some leadership in that respect.
Well, please help me thank President Daniels and his entire team for a great presentation and hosting us in a great visit. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, and thanks. Welcome back.
Okay, next up, Ball State University. Interim President Terry King will present on their behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm delighted to be here to talk about Ball State University as we look at some of our accomplishments recently and what we think is a way of explaining the goals that you have of competency, career, and completion, as well as our 2017-2019 state budget request. Oops. So starting off, just a little bit of a snapshot of our student body. On this first slide, you see that we have a fairly large enrollment right now, one of our largest in history. We're at just slightly less than 22,000 students. 84% of these undergraduates are from the state of Indiana. We have about 4,500 first-generation college students, 1,900 for 21st century scholars, and of the entire student body, 16% represent minority populations. 43% receive institutional aid of some sort. Now, the entering class, again, we have a fairly large entering class. We're very proud of this class. You see, we just have slightly under 4,000 freshmen coming in, 82% from the state. 71% of these students have earned the Indiana Academic Honors Diploma or its equivalent, a little over a 3.4 GPA. You can see their SAT scores there. And as you heard earlier, we're also very proud of the underrepresented minority populations. It's 19% of our freshman class. We've worked very hard for that over the years. We've increased the number of academic advisors and degree mapping to help us with these students, and you'll see that reflects in our freshman to sophomore retention rate, which has been climbing up the last few years. This is actually a very important metric for us. Of those students who leave us, actually roughly half leave because of academic disqualification. There are other factors that students have for not staying beyond their first year. It could be financial, it could be personal, or a variety of things. But as I indicated earlier, we are really focusing on this through intentional strategic investments of additional advisors for these students. We implemented degree mapping a number of years ago. It seems to be a very important factor. Wraparound student services in student life with counseling and living learning residence halls, which is a very good thing. We also created an achievement app, which some of you have seen when you're on our campus, for our Pell Grant students that helps them engage with the university in ways that students have not in the past. We found that to be significantly impactful on the first-year retention rate. And one thing I want to talk about more a little bit later is some entrepreneurial experiments in learning, because one of the most effective ways of keeping students on campus and having them graduate on time is being effective in the classroom. And we've conducted some experiments like the Math Emporium I'll talk about in a few minutes, and others. So degrees completed at Ball State University has been going up over a number of years. The red bar, of course, is the undergraduate degrees, and the gray bar indicates our graduate program degrees. You'll see that the graduate degrees peaked a few years ago, and there has been a decrease in master's degrees. It's primarily associated with the changes in state regulations regarding teacher preparation and acquiring master's degrees. This is one of the first slides that we will talk about completion, career, and competency. So a steady trend upward in degree completion. And these are the high-impact degrees that have also been going up, both undergraduate and graduate degrees. Now, we have just implemented our new College of Health. It started in July. It's a differently focused college on interprofessional education, and we expect that to help us with this high-impact area. Especially with a new health professions building, which we'll break ground on this next year. We certainly appreciate your support in developing that last time. It's the extension of that to the phase 2 is our #1 capital priority phasing into next year. It'll house a new foundational sciences building, which will house biology, chemistry, geology, and other research labs. We do have increased capacity for those degrees, so we expect it to greatly help with the growing life sciences sector within the state. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about this later. At-risk degrees, defined as students who when they complete their degree, were on a Pell Grant sometime during that time. It's been going up over the period of time. These are first generation and minority students. This is where we put special attention with additional advisors and student affairs whose sole responsibility is to guide these students through their campus years. And then finally, in this area, the 4-year graduation rate has been climbing here. So our target for next year at the end of our strategic plan is 50%, and we're getting very close to that and on track to do that. Over the 6 years, our graduation rate has increased by 12%. So to summarize some of these areas, you see our degree completion has gone up, our high-impact degrees over the period of time since 2006, on-time graduation rate, at-risk degrees, and just for comparison show state appropriations over that same period of time. And it's partly due to the lag time we feel in the accountability factors. Now, we're firmly behind accountability. We think it's important. Data-driven accountability is absolutely something I believe in, and I think it's something we should be focusing our attention on. We just need to find a way to minimize the lag time for seeing the rewards to that. So we're very appreciative of the Commission and the Indiana General Assembly's overall increase in higher education over the last years. We've been more fortunate than some of our colleagues in other states. Now, in competency, I want to talk about a few things here. I mean, we at Ball State have had a real strong effort in what we call very immersive learning. These are high experiential experiences for our students. Last year, for example, approximately 4,000 of our undergraduate students participated in some intense immersive learning experience. One example is something we call the Digital Core. And this is a group of students who really focus on developing technology applications for a variety of applications across campus. When some of you were on our campus earlier this year in August, you saw the work they were doing building unique experiences for the bicentennial that's coming up. And these are real work experiences for these students. They work in teams and they develop these wonderful applications as they move forward. One thing they were developing when you were on campus, we showed you their work with the helping 4th and 5th graders in their classroom experiences with basically electronic field trips. Another example is the, maybe watching the bicentennial torch relay. We're very appreciative of Purdue for building that lovely torch that the runner is carrying there. We have about 30 students and a faculty member embedded with this group. Our telecommunications students are documenting this, creating video, photos, and it will result in a 30-minute documentary, which will be aired soon. I mentioned earlier our College of Health. Because it is an interprofessional education focus, they'll have plenty of opportunities with clinicals, internships, and simulation labs. Some of the academic programs are listed there. And it's really exciting to watch this program develop and the students and the faculty members be involved here. One of the things I'm most excited about is looking at experiments that we've been conducting, how to decrease the rate of students receiving Ds, Fs, or withdrawing from a course. And if you think about efficiencies in higher education, these are students that have to retake the course or they leave. And so if we can reduce that DFW rate, we can do a significant advancement on our academic efficiency, bringing these students to success. So starting in 2015, we piloted a program called our Math Emporium, and you can actually see a photograph of it there at the bottom of that slide. That doesn't look like a normal classroom. Now that's college algebra that students are studying. And college algebra is a particularly difficult course, as an example, because students come in with a variety of experiences, all different from the person next to them. So how do you teach that course? If you're just teaching in the normal, traditional format, you lose many of the students right away. Some students are bored, and eventually you lose a good fraction of the students in the course. By implementing this adaptive learning software, which helps students learn from where they are, we've been able to increase our success rate in this class. So, for example, the pass rate in just 1 year has increased 13% in this one course. In the pre-calculus algebra, it's increased about 10%. But what's most interesting to me is the students receiving A's and B's has gone from 31 to 44%. So these are students who are now very successful in that course and will not have to recycle their way and teach that course again or take that course again. This will be part of our request to the legislature that I'll talk about in just a minute. Another thing we've implemented recently is our focus on our Career Center and engagement. So we've really modified the operations there. You'll see that we've had nearly 3,800 interactions with about 12,000 different students this past academic year. And another key component of that is this key careers, intentional strategy at freshman orientation. So we require all of our students coming in at freshman orientation to go through an assessment of what they want to study, what they want to do when they graduate. A significant fraction of freshmen do not have that clarity of professional orientation when they come in. And we're finding this is a way that we can get them infused in their career early on and move them into the appropriate discipline to start off with, not having to change majors later. Plus, we keep track of those students over the 4 years, so they're constantly in contact with our Career Center throughout the 4 years that they're at Ball State University. Now, we also were a participant in the Gallup survey. It demonstrates the value and affordability of, you see that 84% of the alumni agreed strongly that, or agreed that their education was worth the cost. 81% strongly agreed that their jobs gave them work interest and satisfaction, and so on down the list. We're pretty proud of the results there. I want to touch on fiscal stewardship, and I know it's important to you as well. In the last 10 years, for example, operating expenditures per FTE have consistently been lower than other higher education institutions and lower than the CPI, of course. At Ball State University, compensation accounts for 68% of our annual budget. Now, the last time I checked, we were 70% of our peers the number of administrators per faculty or per student FTE, so significantly fewer administrators at Ball State. And I should say that all of our classes at Ball State are taught by faculty members, not graduate assistants. Other ways to control costs is through employee health care costs. We've eliminated our traditional plans. We've renegotiated contracts, promoted consumer-driven plans, reduced employer contributions to more expensive health care plans, and we've implemented a number of wellness initiatives to encourage healthy living. Energy costs at Ball State have gone down significantly, and we thank the Commission and the General Assembly's investment in our geothermal program, saving us about $2 million a year in energy costs now. And this fiscal stewardship resulted in the lowest tuition increase in 39 years for Ball State in the current fiscal year. Now, our capital requests are lined up, as you see in this slide. We're asking for the phase 2 of our STEM and health professions facility. Currently, we have the Cooper Science Complex, a 300,000 square foot building that was built in the early 60s, mid-60s, sometimes referred to as a Sputnik era facility, very outdated at this point. We received funding last year for our new health professions building, which will house a good chunk of our College of Health, breaking ground in 2017. That's a 165,000 square foot facility that will house nursing, health sciences, and all of our clinics. The next phase is what we're proposing in our budget as a new foundational sciences building, 175,000 square feet, which will have biology, chemistry, geology, and various labs. Biology as a discipline at Ball State has doubled in enrollment in the last 15 years, a real strong emphasis on life sciences. Now, one thing we wanted to mention is the cost of new science buildings are quite high. It's certainly more expensive than when Cooper Science was originally built. And since that building was built, there's a number of new regulations that have come into place which cause the cost to go way up. And most of those regulations are associated with life safety and health. You see EPA, OSHA, the Indiana OSHA, ADA, and various other things that have caused the cost of these academic science buildings to go up significantly. So it is an expensive building. Our other remaining capital request down the road, our College of Architecture and Planning expansion renovation, it was built in 1970 with an addition 10 years later. We really need to update that sometime in the near future. We have our business building built in the late 70s. Again, it needs to be some update there, particularly in the way we teach our classes. We don't teach classes the way we taught them 30, 40, 50 years ago. There's significant variations there. And of course, campus utility infrastructure and a modification of our theater and dance facilities. Oops. And finally, wanted just to review the line items for Ball State. We have two historical line items. One of them is the one for the Entrepreneurial University line. And we're requesting an additional $5 million one-time ask in this area to create more interactive learning spaces. Now, when many of you were on campus in August, you got to interview the faculty members who teach in these classes, and you got to actually experience one of the classrooms. These are very different types of classrooms. The effectiveness of these classrooms is very high. And if we can get an investment of $5 million for 20 new classrooms, we will also add in from our own resources about $2.5 million for 10 more classrooms. Now, we only allow faculty members to teach in those rooms who have been trained to teach in them. Otherwise, they would teach the same way they've always taught. But again, the results in these new classrooms is phenomenal, and we wish to really build on that. Part of the whole task of that is to make these very active spaces where students take control of their own learning. And finally, we have the Indiana Academy for Science, Mathematics, and Humanities. We actually have two schools on our campus. We have the Burris K-12 Laboratory School, which is a very popular school in Muncie, but also a statewide opportunity for very gifted students for this 2-year residential high school. It's been around for a little over 25 years now. Remarkable students come to this, and we're asking for inflationary adjustments to that. Currently, that school has 340 students. Now, I've really gone through these presentations quite quickly, but I certainly hope that we have an opportunity to discuss any of the things in detail that you would like to focus on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, President King. Very impressive and helpful information. I really appreciate, especially pointing out some of the high points that Ball State has become so well respected and known for as it relates to immersion and entrepreneurism and efficiency and effectiveness. Obviously, from a cost standpoint, that was really helpful. So, questions for President King?
How do you view the relationships between the health school and the College of Nursing? I mean, the new health college and the College of Nursing. They'll be in the same building at some point, will they not?
They're actually, the School of Nursing will be in the College of Health.
Right.
So they're the same, in the same college. So we're having nursing, social work, speech pathology, audiology, health sciences, kinesiology are all co-located in that same facility. Kinesiology, by the way, has this tremendous human performance laboratory that some of you may know of. And when President Daniels was talking about NASA, I just recall that almost all the astronauts have gone through that human performance lab and left tissue samples there for them to study. Also on the Ball State campus, we have Ball State faculty members who are teaching the IU Medical School in Muncie. That's a 4-year part of the medical school. So those students and faculty members are interacting with this college, even though they're a separate entity. They're really closely tied.
So you'll have all the health activities in one new building.
Well, not all of them will be in that building. So we'll have in that building nursing, health science, and maybe some of the, I think speech pathology and audiology will be in that building. Kinesiology is just too big to move into there, and they have some great facilities already.
Could you clarify something for me, that requesting an additional $5 million for 20 new interactive learning classrooms, then you show 7.5 and 2.5 and 18 and 19?
So the extra $5 million comes in 18, and then it drops back down to the 2.5 level that we have now.
Gotcha. Okay, I see.
So the 2.5 is traditional,
base.
yeah, historical.
Okay.
It's just an additional. You could think of that almost as a capital request, but because of the way we're using it for operations, I think it makes a lot of sense to have it plugged in here.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to ask you the same question. I just think it's always intriguing to know what's going on with the individuals who have the responsibility of leading higher education institutions and within the broader context. And obviously, yours being a regional university that has such an important role within the. What do you see as the challenges and issues within the context of your charge at Ball State and Ball State's mission? What do you see as the opportunities, the challenges, the issues from your perspective?
Once you get by the sort of operational concerns that all people have, all presidents have about how do you find enough resources to do what you're currently doing, it's then thinking about what do we need to be thinking about 5 and 10 and 15 years down the road. So innovation and entrepreneurial thinking are extraordinarily important now because we really can't predict everything that's going to happen. As an example, about 6 or 7 years ago, we focused on where we thought we had to be in this constellation of opportunities, especially with respect to online education and the future of education using adaptive technology and so on. And the conclusion we came to at that point was those things are really coming together. So we made a real strong effort to ramp up our online opportunities at Ball State, at the same time developing the already strong technology we have on campus, but even expanding that to other areas. So what we have now happening is that over half of our undergraduate students take at least one online class every year. And that allows them to get their degrees faster because they can fit that into their work schedule and do it when they need to, or they could be on an internship somewhere and still take a class and keep up. So that's the kind of innovation that has to happen. We think in the next few years, the changing the classroom environment will be a big part of that, and hence the innovative interactive learning spaces.
And then the high school, what percentage is coming from outside of Balls, outside of Balls?
For the, well, we have 2 schools. So the Burris Laboratory School, that's almost entirely within our Delaware County area. But the Indiana Academy for Math, Sciences, and Humanities is a residential high school. So these students come from the entire state.
That school, what percentage is actually coming from outside of Delaware County? Would you know?
I don't know the answer to that, but the majority of them do come from outside. We have a very few number of non-residential students that apply and get into that program for special reasons, and they're very local. But most of those students are from a distance. And primarily that was designed early on for students who did not have those opportunities in their own high school or wherever to come to a place where they could do that.
Other questions? Okay, wonderful. Thank you again, Dr.
Thank
King,
you.
very much, and all your colleagues at Ball State. Thanks for the great work. And last but not least for the day, Ivy Tech Community College and President Sue Elsperman. So welcome.
Thank you, Trustee, and thank you, Commissioner Lovers, for the opportunity to be here. And I want to do a special shout out to our own trustee, Micah Mosier, for serving on the commission. She's a great addition to Ivy Tech, but I know you're enjoying her perspective as well. We are passing out the presentation, so you'll have this information. And let me just, as you're getting share with you that I'm now entering my 4th month. I had the pleasure in June to travel to about 22 different locations as president-elect, which the trustees were gracious enough to give me a month prior to coming on board. Sat in with 52 sessions with faculty and staff and about 750 faculty and staff members. So my intent of that was to understand the music of Ivy Tech, not just the numbers. It was a great experience and one that certainly helps guide me through these early months to make sure that what we do isn't just analytically correct, but it's right by our people and our students as well. So, let me also then introduce just a couple of people who are here, because I think it's going to be important that as we get questions, I will use a lifeline occasionally if I need it, but I'm going to introduce Andy Bound, COO. Would you stand up, Andy? And our our provost, Dr. Steve Tincher in the back, and then probably the other person you may hear from is Amanda Wilson, our VP of Facilities. And then we have more backup for that as well. They really prepared me well. So let me talk about just our role. You know, we really appreciate the ability to make an impact at the workforce level here in the state of Indiana. We understand that the state makes a tremendous investment in us, about $250 million a year, which allows us to fulfill that mission. We are pursuing the Lumina goal, which CHE has adopted, as has the Career Council, which I was a part of over the last 4 years. And as you look at that million degrees or credentials, about half or more will be in the sub-baccalaureate space, which is clearly our space and Vincennes University space. That's a big job to do. We're not there yet. We're doing about 20,000 credentials a year, and we should be on track for 50,000 a year if we're going to help achieve that Lumina goal. So let's just look at that with student success. You see that today, that 20,000, and we'd really like to get to 50,000. Around workforce, we couldn't agree more with the work of this body as well as the General Assembly that our institution must be aligned with workforce, and it's our full intent to work in that direction. Here's just to give you a look at where our numbers are today. You can see that we peaked during the recession, but if you look to the left and compare to the right, that's still a significant improvement. I hope that your copy looks a little cleaner than what you see up here, as PowerPoint has changed it just a little bit. But you can see that there's still a significant increase from the 2006 and 07, though we have a lot of work to do to get that trend back up so that our employers have the skilled workforce that they need. And then if we look just with the full-time equivalents, excluding, again, the high school, the dual credit piece out of that, you see those numbers about the same trend from significantly up from 2006, 10 years ago, but not where we were during the peak when, as I say, students were knocking our door down to get in. Now they have options. They have jobs, and it is more difficult, but still as equally important, if not more important, to attract them back. So we will talk about more of that as we go forward. As we look at credential growth, you can see lots of improvement over the years in terms of the number of credentials that are being awarded at the associate level and below into those TCs, technical certificates, and career certificates, and about 20,000 a year. But you can see how that is a marked increase from earlier years. So there's been much effort made in ensuring that our students are receiving those degrees and credentials that they can go do something with. But again, with that said, we need to do much more. The number that you don't see up here, but is an interesting one, and one that I saw this summer when I was on campus in June, is I met ASAP students, the accelerated associate program students, but virtually every other student I met was a guest student. I would introduce myself, thinking I'm going to meet another Ivy Tech person. I'd say, oh, I'm here from IUPUI. Oh, I'm here, but I go to Purdue. Oh, I'm here, but I go to Ball State. It's interesting to know that we do 50,000 credits for students in that guest level, which is about a $14 million savings for them a year, not including any room and board if they had to go an extra semester at their resident university. So just another piece of the story that maybe we don't tell as well as we ought. So we are in a problem-solving mode of figuring out how do we really turn and align and right-size this engine. And one way we're doing that is in a partnership with Aspen Institute and Achieving the Dream. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these institutions, but Ivy Tech partnered with them this past spring to really give us some strategic guidance. We asked them to consider us as if we were one of the prize colleges that were pursuing that prize and just give us some good feedback. And so they did, and their work will continue this fall at a regional level as they visit and do site visits there as well. But I'd like to share some of the insights that they gave us, and if you're interested in the report, we're very, very happy to get it to you. But just a few of the things that came out of it. First, they recognized that with new leadership comes a new opportunity, a reset button, if you will, and they hope that we would take advantage of that time, and of course, we will do that. They pointed out that we haven't defined student success among all its levels. It's an uncertain what that really means. Is it from the student's perspective? And what does a student mean by success? We have some work to do to really define what that looks like, as well as both from the workforce, the strong labor market, but also in the transfer. What is success there? Is it just a student going off to a four-year institution? Is it completing on a particular time frame? Is it based on credit hours that in excess that they take, et cetera? So there's work to be done there. They were very impressed by our college's strength in developing workforce, and you can't not be impressed by the commitment of faculty and staff. The most apparent thing I saw coming in June as I met with those 750 faculty and staff is that it is almost a vocation to work at Ivy Tech, to serve the students that we do. And I don't want to say the kind of, because they're great students, but Micah will understand when we talk about what those students look like. And this comes from the Aspen report. We serve 16% of underrepresented minorities, which looks low when you look at the national numbers. However, Indiana is about 14% minority, so we actually overperform, but could and should do even more there. 2/3 of our students receive Pell, so it gives you a sense. 42%, as you can see, are 25 or older, so we're not a traditional college age as you think of the 18 or 19-year-old. 2/3, again, are part-time. So our metrics generally measure us on the full-time, first-time, full-time, yet by far, our student is actually the part-time student, and we need to be very mindful of that in everything we do in defining success for them. And then you can see that we're very high in the technical and vocational credentials that we award, which really is a good thing. So it was helpful for us to see how do we compare. On a few other metrics, you can see in terms of our first year experience, I think Commissioner Lubbers, as you've been pushing for those 30 hours in that year, look at those numbers. We're overperforming to the prize-eligible colleges as our students are doing very well in their credit hours earned, significantly better than even those our peers across the nation. So that's a good metric for us. But then when we look at first-year retention, we know that this is an area we have work to do. So what is happening? We do know that about 50,000 of our students will transfer with 30 hours, but not that associate's degree after a year. We do get half credit for them if they did the TGEC, but that it doesn't always happen. So they are going on, and if they don't get that 4-year degree, then they've lost out. So that's something we have to be very thoughtful of, but that first-year retention rate is certainly a number that we will work on going forward. 3-year graduation and transfer rate, this is not exactly measured the same as CHE does, but again, it shows those year-to-year, 3 years, 150%, and those that transfer on, I think your numbers would be just a little bit different, but pretty close. And then our degrees awarded per 100 full-time equivalents. So again, some opportunity there to have those degrees awarded. And a lot happens because they transfer so quickly, they don't stay for the 2-year degree, and so we don't see those credentials awarded as well. One of the major accomplishments in the General Assembly last year, and a good thing for us, was Senate Enrolled Act 301. I kid that not many colleges get their own bill, but I always call that the Ivy Tech bill. And it has several requirements for us, of which we are not just doing what the legislation says, but trying to live up to the legislative intent that the General Assembly crafted for us. And that looks at, because of our dual mission, student success and workforce alignment, that just as we have a provost, a chief academic officer, we should also have a chief workforce officer. We have filled that position with one of our chancellors, Chris Lowry, who comes out of industry and is in that. And now we are realigning the organization to have a senior VP of workforce for each of Indiana's sectors, which will work very closely with each of our regions to ensure that we are aligned. It required that DWD has a designee on each of our advisory committees. What you might find interesting here is there are a lot of those, a little over 300 of those advisory committees across Ivy Tech for each of our regions and our programs. So that has been completed and is underway. And then probably a piece that got a lot of attention and has resulted in a lot of collaboration between CHE, DWD, and Ivy Tech is this notion of really understanding occupational demand. By law, they were required, DWD was required to give us that report July 1. It arrived within a week of that. And we have been working through those 300 some careers and crosswalking them into what are our programs so that we know not only that we have the right programs, but we have the right capacity in those programs. In some cases, as we do those crosswalks by region, we will find out that we don't need every program that we have. In some cases, we will find out we need new or expanded. What I suspect the most interesting finding is where we have the capacity, but we haven't filled the seats. You know, where we really need to recruit in. And you think about those high demand areas, whether it's IT, healthcare, or advanced manufacturing, some of the areas I know, Dan, that you're so familiar with in the Southwest Central areas. So our commitment has to be to not only have the right capacity, but to recruit into it as well. So we are working on that and appreciate CHE's being at the table with us on that. We will have by January 1, a visualization of that by region so that General Assembly members, you all, DWD, employers, students, counselors, others can see in a profession what that level of demand is and how promising it is, including wage data and educational requirements. So we also have several other requirements, which is, as we did in the spring, providing the academic program review. We'll do that again next spring, and in this November to report on our support programs, and that work is underway. So all of this is preliminary work that needs to be done as we go forward. But let me talk about, as I've come in going forward, we know that it is time for Ivy Tech to do a strategic plan, and that's not to have one done for us, but to actually roll up our sleeves and figure it out together. It's my goal out of this is that we will be rowing the boat together at the end of 2017, faculty, staff, regions, and central office. I've set a goal of over 50% faculty engagement in that activity because the one thing that I observed coming in was our faculty did not feel well engaged. Now recognize that we are about 25% full-time faculty, 75% part-time. We have about a third, those full-time faculty will teach about a third of our courses, but they have not felt integral to how our institution makes decisions. And in a college is, by definition, collegial, and that is something expected and something that we will do. We will also be engaging stakeholders from the outside with a very purpose of having them push us, so that will be workforce and higher education and things like the Aspen report that will push us in ways that we may not comfortably choose to go on our own. But that will be an iterative process over the next year where we will establish and affirm mission, but vision, core values, goals and strategies, and expecting out of that to emerge at least metrics we will use and we hope that the commission will consider using down the road as well. But let me speak to just some of our best practices that are going on. I want to just highlight maybe 3 of those right now. One is one that we just have taken on since I came in. We have at Ivy Tech the best, I would think the best, we'll test that out there as we present at EDUCAUSE next week, data warehouse that helps us to understand bringing all of our separate systems together to really be able to do the data mining and understanding the analytics. But one analytic we know is within 2 weeks, we know with 81% accuracy whether an Ivy Tech student is likely to succeed or fail. Within 2 weeks, and that's no grades. That is 2 weeks. Are they getting on Blackboard, the learning management system? Have they purchased their books? Have they attended class? So we know enough behaviors in that 2 weeks to predict that accurately, and that's a wonderful thing. However, I discovered we weren't doing anything with that data. So we launched something called Project Early Success. Ann Valentine, who is here, was one of, and Andy Bound, who's here, were 2 of those project leaders. And we set the goal that we would reach out to each and every student that was at that risk of failing. That was a lot of calls. There were over 16,000 at risk. We came within a little over 1,000 of getting to each one. We actually spoke and worked with about 1/3 of those students. And out of it, here's what we learned. We learned that the students appreciated the call. They were not annoyed. Of course, we didn't call them and say, you're failing. We said, how are you doing? How's everything going? But we did know by the algorithm how that student was struggling. And those were advisors, they were faculty members, staff members, central office. This was an all-hands-on-deck activity for those 2 weeks. So we were able to reach out to nearly every student. I've put a little prize out there to see which of the regions at the end of midterms have turned the most red to green in the students, and seeing how many are passing at midterm. So it's become a very college-wide activity, something we will continue into future years. We've learned a lot about our students. It's given us the kind of data. When we made those calls, we logged them all, so we have a database through Qualtrics that tells us exactly what that student said by open-ended responses, or we have some general categories where we know they didn't get their books or they were having trouble with the course. So we're going through that data now to figure out how do we make this front end better. One of our regions is now going to do Project Midterm Success, where they'll make calls to those students who are on the bubble at midterms. But it's that kind of commitment to our student. We can't have them there and not do everything we can. When we know their name, their number, their email address, we need to take that activity. We've continued to redesign the remedial courses. We're seeing great progress with the co-requisite model. And then tutor.com is something that we've been offering up to 15 hours of free tutoring each term, and we've seen, again, marked improvements there, and we'll continue those. Just a couple more as I talk about some of this has to do with that workforce demand. So I've said we could get every 18-year-old to come to college, be that 2 or 4 years, and that would not help us get to the Lumina goal. It would help. It would not get us to the Lumina goal. So we have to get more of those incumbent workers back. We have embarked upon Achieve Your Degree statewide, which is a concierge service with employers who then, as Cook Medical, thank you, Dan, with your efforts there, to help bring students into the programs, their employees, into those areas that they wish to see those students go into and move up in their organization. We do FAFSA with them. We do it on-site. We defer payment till the end of the semester, and we've set a goal now of 5,000 of these students by fall of next year. I think we could do 10,000. We've had some great statewide interest by organizations like Trilogy that just signed an MOU with us. We have great interest from IU Health and others, and we'll continue to roll that out. Our College Connection coaches are in a number of our regions, 7 regions in all are doing something that way. It's an expensive endeavor, but we know if we can get in there and do that kind of career coaching, we can actually align those students more to workforce demand and help them make good choices. We're working to increase our readmits, and then being interested in the 21st century scholars, you're probably familiar with Inside Track, which I think what came through this commission and USA funds to increase retention with that personalized touch of our each week by a mentor. So those are all programs that are underway, and we'll continue and are all about student success and workforce alignment. On the efficiency front, I'm just going to speak to 3 things. I'm an industrial engineer. We have 6.6 million square feet across the statewide system. We are going to continue to look at ways to skinny up as we can, and that first one should say eliminate square footage and leased, with a D on it, space. We're not trying to lease more space, but we are trying to eliminate leased space where we can, and are doing that effectively. We have, when you have a system like we have, which is unique to the nation, we are taking advantage of centralized purchasing, so procurement efforts are underway, and we've done over 100 Ivy Lean, those are lean management projects. I want to give you just a couple of thoughts about performance funding. First of all, we thank you for your support of our students and success. Recognizing those certificates of less than a year has really been helpful, and meeting workforce needs. There's a few things that we might think about going forward, and we would welcome discussions with the commission, which is really looking at the various workforce training credentials and seeing how can they be measured, how should they be measured. I believe in transfer. We have a lot of opportunity between the 2- and 4-year institutions to improve that transfer process. And how do we help each of us do a better job? It's 2 + 2s, but it's making sure that the student who starts at Ivy Tech never loses a class when they go to that 4-year institution. And how do we encourage that to happen? There are opportunities of reverse transfer, which is so aligned to what should be right for the student, which is ensuring that if they've earned an associate's degree, even if they got that 60th hour somewhere else, they should still be getting credit for that degree from us or Vincennes, and that, again, moves that needle towards educational attainment. Because of that, 2/3 of our students being part-time, I am asking internally that we will begin to measure the student's expected time frame of graduation. I was a non-traditional master's and PhD student. It took me 8 years. If I'd gone full-time, I could have done it in 4. But I was like our students. I was working full-time. I was having children, including a baby on spring break one semester. So it really is important that we respect those students and say, this is success. For them, that is right. So we're going to begin measuring it. And if that measure turns to be a useful one, I hope that the commission will at least look at it in years to come. But we need to be able to measure ourselves against our student, the customer, the true customer's expectation on what they're trying to do and achieve. And then, of course, aligning and recruiting into programs that meet workforce needs. I don't think we've even scratched the surface of how do we really do that well. If we need 300 welders in Northwest Indiana, we've got to figure out how to attract 300 students into welding. So those are our challenges ahead, and hope that performance funding will help. I want to make one mention of dual credit. We do 55,000 dual credit students a year. 56,000, I guess, is the accurate number up there. It is a big number. We appreciate that the commission and the General Assembly does fund us at a $50 an hour rate for dual credit. That would likely adjust going into this General Assembly. But it is important, and I think just the savings that we see, an estimated $40 million that those families save by getting that dual credit, and those being accepted because of the core transfer library at our universities across the state and oftentimes outside the state. So we remain very committed. And the last point there, and Commissioner Lubbers and I and Ken Sowers have talked about this, anything Ivy Tech can do to help with the coming tsunami as those dual credit teachers are retiring, to be able to continue to offer that. We may not have the same perspective as HLC on the need for those masters plus 18, but we want to be part of the solution. The rest I'd like to just speak to what we have in the capitals request. I'm going to start by reminding you that 2 years ago, Ivy Tech got 0 in capital request, so we now have 2 more years of deferred maintenance than we had before. And one of the things I recognized even back in June was not all of our campuses offer the same learning experience, including safety experience, including student experience that you would expect. And so as we approach this, it was incredibly important to me that these would not be pet projects. These would be what was most needed across the system, so that a student in Northwest Indiana could have the same experience as a student in Southeast Indiana and have a quality higher education experience. So the tool that you see up there is the actual paired comparison analysis we did. I'm an industrial engineer. This is a facilities planning tool. And so we literally head-to-head said, if we could only do project A or project B, which one would it be? If we could only do one or the other. And then, by how much more important was it? And we did that systematically after hearing from all of the regions, and you see the actual projects and the priorities. And that is what we took to the State Board of Trustees. Now, if you look carefully, there used to be 2 number 1s up there, tied. And then something happened. We had a tornado. A tornado hit Kokomo 2 weeks after classes started, you may recall. The Inventrec was a building we leased. We had to and I just commend several of those people are in the room today from the Kokomo region, and David Bate, the chancellor of the Bay region. Literally, from Wednesday night until Monday morning, we moved over 300 students out of that building onto the main campus, temporary classrooms, anything we had to do, and they were back in class. So that became, after our own trustees had already looked at this, we convened a special call to say, don't you think we really now need to make Kokomo our number 1? And so that's why you see both Kokomo and Muncie are incredibly important projects for our students and those regions. We are consolidating to the main campus at Kokomo. The goal is always to reduce square footage. We did. The tornado took care of 36,000 square feet for us, So that one's done. And you should know that that building sustained $3.5 million of damage, structural damage. So we would not like to go back into that building, and we think it was already in the plans to bring health professions onto the main campus, and so now we will ask actually with the General Assembly if they would release those dollars in the first year instead of the second year so that we can move this project along. With each of these, after we prioritized them, we did additional work with the regions to see how we could make them even more cost-effective, because my commitment is to never ask the General Assembly for $1 more than we need. So in each case, we were able to bring the numbers down a bit more, but these first 2 projects are expensive. They have not been touched with outside dollars in a significant way in a long time, and they have incredible infrastructure issues that need to be dealt with at the same time. So I won't go through all except to say, to those bullet points, we are requiring, and I required in the process, that we would look at workforce demand in each of these. So anything we expand has proven demand behind it. And I will assure you that that is the approach we will take going forward. So this first project is $43 million, of which $40 million we would be asking for the General Assembly in state funding, and if possible, to come out earlier. If you've been on that campus, and some were recently, you walk on roads that you shouldn't be walking on. There are, you can see in the bottom of that picture, there are Tech 1, 2, and 4 buildings that you have to walk away for. There aren't good paths. It's just not an attractive or good learning environment campus to be on. And it's a high priority to all of us to meet the needs that they have. Their head count right now at Kokomo is about 3,100 students. Muncie is our second one. Here, though we're still going to be in 2 places, we actually eliminate 2 locations in this plan to having our industrial programs in one area and the other programs downtown, so it truly is a consolidation at the end. We actually reduce, if you look region-wide, we will reduce 51,000 square feet out of the footprint, and again, it allows this campus to be of the quality, or at least in the mid-range of what we would expect for student experience. It also is $38 million for the actual state funding, but focused on programs that have high demand. The third is Columbus. Likewise, they came into the presentation with holding one of their pipes that was completely corroded, and as of last week, had another sprinkler outage, which every time you're looking at what damage as you have water damage through the building. They have significant issues to be handled, and this is a campus that is doing well. It does have, it is at its maximum in terms of capacity, so we haven't invested in it in probably over 20 years. So deferred maintenance is just there. It is a $20 million project. And you can see again, health science, advanced manufacturing, which are the 2 primary focuses of that campus. That's where those dollars will go in addition to the repairs. The fourth one does have some of our transfer programs in it, but it is the Harshman Hall renovation. One of the ahas as a new president, as I found out, we accepted lots of gifts over the years, and these are gifts that keep on taking because they aren't good facilities. This used to be a children's psychiatric hospital, I believe. It wasn't ever intended to do what we're doing with it now, and it's too much to tear it down. It's not cheaper to start all over, but you almost wish you could. So it really does require the work. It has most of the student functions in there as well, and again, it has to be done. These systems, the mechanical systems, are running 20 and 30 years beyond what their useful life was expected to be. And at some point, you just have to do it. So this deferred maintenance is a theme. The last one, our number 5, is not. It is the Sellersburg Healthcare Career Center. And you think Sellersburg is in southern Indiana, but it's part of the Louisville metro area. That's a 1.27 million people metro area, of which, if you could say what is the model of a university system working together, our Sellersburg campus, along with Jefferson County Technical College, along with U of L, along with all of those universities, work closely together in what they call Metroversity. And there is a big demand, particularly around healthcare in Louisville. If you've been there, and I live close to there, and I'm a U of L master's and PhD, so very familiar with the area. Healthcare is a big part of that market and growing. And our counties, just so you know, Clark and Floyd County, where our individuals live, 2/3 of those people in Clark and Floyd work in Louisville. So we have to think about the entire metro area, not just if you looked at EGR 9 or 10, I'll mess that up, but whichever economic growth region, you wouldn't see the demand, but the demand is metro. They have huge opportunities around healthcare to expand, and that campus has done very, very well. They have over 6,000 students, and with Kentucky cutting higher education funding by 4.5% last year, we have more and more students who want to come to us as well. So the demand is there. These are in alignment with their occupational demand numbers, and they've reviewed them carefully. And so my last, as we just look forward, the last piece for opening it up to questions is just to give you a glimpse. I don't want to tell you what our strategic plan is because I know we will create that together. But just looking forward, here's my commitments. We will be aligning the Ivy Tech campuses, programs, and recruiting to be what the occupational demand is. And that will be worked with our local employers as well as K-12 and all of our sister institutions. We will get into the recruiting of both high school and incumbent workers into the high-wage, high-demand careers. We have to do that because we can't wait for them to find them on their own. I know many regions are experiencing that. For student success, we will continue to use a data-driven but even more high-touch approach, and so we have to uncover what those, whether it's Project Early Success or other tools, we're going to have to continue to do that and do that at a higher level because our students are a non-traditional student almost by definition. And finally, something that I hope we can work together on is helping encourage our students to complete that associate's degree before they move on. I use the analogy of if you want to run a marathon, not many can get up and say, I'm going to train and be successful in a marathon the first time. But if they start by running a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon, they almost assuredly can figure out how to run a full marathon. And that's what an associate's degree is for many. We can get them the half marathon so that they have the confidence to do the rest. And if life happens, they still have the associate's degree. So how we get there is something that I hope we can work together with our four-year partners and the commission, but it is something that is right for the student, it's right for our employers as they have these demands for workforce, and it's right in helping us reach the Lumina goal. So with that, I'll open it up. I forgot to turn on my timer, so I apologize if I ran over.
You did great. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank
And
you.
we know you're a quick study, but it's obvious you've learned a lot and pulled a lot
I'm now
together
this
here in 4
deep.
months.
I was that deep, I'm this deep now. But thank you.
Your team prepared you well, obviously.
did.
Yeah. So questions for President Ellspermann?
Chris.
President Ellspermann, first of all, congratulations on your appointment to Ivy Tech, and frankly, congratulations to Ivy Tech, because I think it is a great match in terms of the skill sets that you bring to the institution. It's a very complex mission that you have.
Yes, it is.
Almost a schizophrenic mission. And by that I mean that when Ivy Tech was originally conceived and put together as a statewide community college system, the heavy focus was on what you indicate here on page 20. Well, no, I'm sorry, on the last page here, which was a focus on associate degrees. So it was a front door into higher education with the hope
The
that
transfer.
it would then move up, which is critical. And along the way, Ivy Tech has also picked up the complexity of a workforce development component, which is certifications and things like that, some less than a year, some a year, whatever. Two very, very different things that require different disciplines. Can you comment a little bit about how you look at that and how you envision going forward in trying to serve two very, very distinct, separate missions and that drive that drive different incentives that you've got to be aware of?
Yeah, it is, but it isn't in the sense that, you know, I would say one of the levels of complexity that's most apparent is 32 campuses across the state of Indiana being that largest singly accredited community college in the nation. And yet, I think any state in the nation would envy Indiana to have what we have in Ivy Tech because we have this ability to impact workforce across an entire system. The transfer side is really a more recent growth of community college, and you all have the better history on some of that than I do, as I saw it from a distance. But that ability for someone in Evansville or let's pick a smaller town like Batesville to do their first 2 years locally. And I will tell you where we've seen this work so well is in agriculture with Purdue. So Purdue still is the agriculture college. But right here in Lafayette, we're the #2 ag school in the state. And Columbus, where I was yesterday, is the 3rd ag school in the state with the number of people, of those students who can get their 2-year degree there in agriculture. And it'll be about, not necessarily 50-50, but quite a number will do the associates and stop. And they'll have what they need to go into a career in agriculture, maybe working for a chemical company, applications, et cetera. The others will transfer here to Purdue and finish. And they wouldn't be able to do that except for an Ivy Tech. So it is student success and it is workforce alignment. And I don't see them as separate things. Because the other thing, and I often think about some of our 21st century scholars that come to us, not all, particularly the ones, we get a lot of 2.5 and below from earlier years, 21st century scholars. They may not likely to succeed in a lot of the 4-year institutions. They may not even get to a 2-year associate with us. But if they're failing, we can put them in a shorter term credential so that before they leave, they have welding or industrial maintenance or something that allows them to pursue that post-secondary. So I think that's the plus of us having those 2 missions. If we can use them well, if we can't get confused by all the complexity that we have to deal with. Dr. Tincher, for the State Board of Trustees, tried to diagram all of our degree paths and how they all entered the associates, the applied associates, the TCs, the CTs. And I'm pretty sure after about 10 minutes, the trustees were a little glazed over. We're working on that to try to find an even easier way, because there is a lot of complexity in it. But I think we have an amazing system. And if and when we do it right, we will be a model for the nation. And it is challenging, but I will tell you that I have found this group, whether it's central office staff or faculty leaders or the person who's working in security, we're up to the task. And I look forward to evolving with this team the strategies that have not yet been invented on how we're going to do it, because it's doable. It's a creative challenge. They know my favorite words are how might we, so we will figure it out. See, Mike has already heard, so how might we is just it's the new normal, but it's the new normal in a good way. We are at a point in Indiana's history where we have more jobs than we have people to fill them. It's our once in a maybe even century opportunity to move people out of minimum wage jobs into middle skills. And if we, Ivy Tech, don't step forward and meet this 50,000 degrees or credentials a year, Hoosiers will be out. Because those employers, as you know, Chris, will still hire the people. They'll come from Illinois or Michigan or somewhere else. Or, worse yet, those employers will leave and go somewhere else. So it's not an easy challenge, but so what? I signed up for the hard one. I want to be in the boat with these people figuring it out, because that's when we can really do what we want to do for Indiana with helping Hoosiers have the prosperity that they strive for, being able to take care of their families, and our employers having the workforce that they need. So little bit crazy at times, but a very worthy goal. Thank you for asking.
Chris has made an excellent point about the schizophrenia of
Oh, sure.
Ivy Tech, and you've made an excellent explanation of how you're going to deal with it in a way that's better than it's ever been before. But the reason I asked, or join the issue here, is what is this Senate Enrolled Act provision that says you have to hire one vice president for your workforce and one for your academic side? Is that useful, or is this permanent?
Well, I can only tell you, you want to pick carefully who you have in those 2 positions, because we do have, and I cannot say in high enough accolades the work that our provost, Dr. Tincher, has done. He's been amazing to work with. And I feel equally strong that Chris Lowry, as he comes in, has exactly the right perspective, because this is not two silos. This is to help accelerate our ability to respond to workforce, to be right on it. And these two leaders are demonstrating, and we are reorganizing all the way down in a way that ensures that we eliminate the silos, but that we're talking and that we understand directly what workforce needs are, and that we can't wait a year for a new program, or when we get around to it. An employer has to feel they have a direct line to us, and that's what we're reorganizing as we speak. And again, I think it has to be modeled from the top, and I'm absolutely 100% confident that our top is modeling it, and then we have to help everyone to the student level and the employer level do the same.
That language is sunset language, but not until 2020, I believe. Am I correct? Someone back there from Ivy Tech. Is that right? Yes. So the language that was put in by the legislature would sunset, although without speaking for President Ellspermann, that idea of having that kind of integrated but vice president of sort of equal status, I think, is one that is, I think the college is responsive to that idea, and actually, in some ways, had people operating in some way like that before. It just wasn't called out in statute. But in terms of being, Chris made the same comment to me over here, isn't that really in their business more than we normally are?
Yes.
And to which I said, you should have seen it when it started. But it is sunset language.
But I will say what's good about it is, because it is in that statute, it's not a choice. We need to make it work, and we need to figure out, I think, at least the conference I attended this summer with other community college presidents, we're the only one in the room that hasn't, but if it can work, we're going to try to make it work, and certainly we will become more workforce aligned, and certainly it's a very visible sign to the entire Ivy Tech institution that these are our dual missions, that we are there to help students achieve, and 40% will transfer, Chris, and the other 60% are going to go into the workforce. And that's equally important, and we do them both, and we can hold both of those objectives in the air at the same time.
You've convinced me, and I think you've
convinced
everybody that you'll make a success out of this.
We will.
Except if people who are responsible for this legislation don't send you names of the people they would like to have those jobs.
Yeah, they have been very hands-off, and we have had, in all cases, our approach has been a structured panel interview approach where in fact, DWD sat at the table and was on the interview. Steve Braun helped to be in that selection of who would be in workforce, because we believe our customer is, in that case, that is our customer, and we will do the same through other positions like that as well. But it's been actually very positive so far. I'm sure there are people in the organization who aren't telling me how uncomfortable I've made them yet. My honeymoon will be over soon. But I think everyone has had the right attitude about let's do this and do it right. Yes,
Susanna?
Micah.
Susanna?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Susanna.
Okay. Hi.
Hi,
Thank you very
Suzanne.
much for the presentation. I think it's, congratulations. I think it's very, not just informative, but it's very refreshing to see this kind of information and this process put forward. My question really lies more, obviously, we are all familiar with some of these numbers, but as you look at attracting the kind of caliber of students, not just retaining them, which we saw in your report, but attracting them, is there some level of attention going there yet, or is that just too early?
The College Connection coaches are part of that. The Achieve Your Degree is part of that, which is the incumbent workers. And what I've said is we really need a series of strategies on both of those. So I think those will emerge as we go through strategic planning. Each of it, the other nice thing about having 14 regions is that we have, and 32 campuses, we have a lot of innovation happening at the local level. And in fact, that's usually where our best programs like Achieve Your Degree come from. It's a region who's trying something different. Columbus has just, and we're just now thinking about scaling it, is commit to complete.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're there. But just hearing about how that program's been developed and increasing the completion rates of the students and the incentives along the way and the mentoring and a number of things that fit into that. But it comes from one region, and then we can look at, do we want to scale that across all? And then what do we as central office, as the support, what can we do to help make that easier to replicate in other areas and provide the shared infrastructure needs, or maybe in this case some fundraising that would help support that. But I think that's going well, and we'll continue to emerge those over the coming year. So hopefully next year I'll be able to tell you what they are.
Okay. Yeah, no, because I know you mentioned it earlier, is that all of a sudden you're not the one place that all these students are
Yeah.
throwing themselves at. There are options, and it's a competition now versus we're guaranteed a certain.
Well, I think in that area of encouraging students to get the associate's degree first is really the how might we that a lot of us should think about agreeing on and working on, because that is going to help a student, whether you're, and I think I saw you, Karen, that has an associate's en route to a bachelor's, that
Bless you.
you almost can't hurt a student. That can only help a student, whether it's reverse transfer or other things. And we should think about, and then that would, right now there's no encouragement, particularly if you're 21st Century Scholar or Pell eligible, not a big incentive to start, but think about what you save. And we've been looking at the numbers on what's the debt of, for instance, our 21st Century Scholars. Their average debt is $500 compared to, even if you're a 21st Century Scholar at a four-year institution, you're going to incur more debt. I don't have their numbers, but it's low. So can we make win-wins? Can we tell that story? We have to do that, but in any way, the commission or others can help reinforce that you're not closing off options by starting at community college. You're actually increasing your options, and you're increasing your marketability. And if life happens, you're well poised if or when it does. And that message is just not there. And we're working on it, but we would take any partners on that effort.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
This goes back to the strategic plan. You said that your goal is 50% of faculty engagement, but as I can speak to.
Full-time faculty engagement.
Yes, the number of full-time faculty is
Yeah.
very low. And speaking from a student's perspective, that presents challenges. So by wanting to increase that faculty engagement, are you looking to increase the number of full-time faculty and rely less on adjunct?
You know, I have not put that in here because I've not asked, and I think it will be, the General Assembly, I think, is very generous to Ivy Tech at $250 million a year already. It would take an additional appropriation to increase our numbers up. In fact, and maybe this body has heard this from others, the Fair Labor Standards Act, that I know you all as employers may be having to do as well, is going to impact us disproportionately in that we have a number of our staff who teach as adjuncts, and that's what puts their income, their livelihood together. And those that fall below that 47,000 amount will no longer, they can't teach because it will be on overtime. So we will actually have a higher demand of adjuncts than we've had in the past, and we will have an increased burden because there will be some that we will need to move up to those that 47,000 level. So there'll be a cost. So we don't have that flexibility in our budget today to measurably increase that. I think that will be enrollment driven. As we bring in more enrollment, then we'll be able to make those cases for the full-time faculty where the tuition, the other half of our revenue stream is on the tuition front, and we can look at that. But it's tight, and the Fair Labor Standards Act is making it even tighter. Yes.
First of all, congratulations. I haven't had the opportunity to tell you, so we're really excited for you. But I just had a quick question. Ivy Tech was heavily involved in the past in remediation. Do you envision, or do you even know yet? Because you're taking all this on, but will you still have an active role in remediation for students who need
And
that?
that's, as I shared, one of the best practices around the co-requisite models is there, yes, and the tutor.com, all those things that help move someone so that the minimum number have to take something as really remedial, but can move into a co-requisite or something that's in their program. So, yeah, we'll continue to work it. And I don't think you'll find better professionals across the country doing this kind of work. And because we're so large, we have enough data that we can do a control versus we could have a control group on one campus and do something on another and see if it really works. And we very carefully measure what's working and what else we can do to make that better. I will say we're also working on on scheduling that what is that preferred schedule for our students, et cetera. And again, very analytically driven so that we're doing it based on what they need versus what our preconceived notion is.
Good stuff. Dennis, I think you had a question?
Yes, actually, a comment. As you start your tenure, I would just like to share sincerely how inspired I am by your vision, by the clarity. I mean, on page 3 it says clear direction, amen. I mean, it comes across, but also the strategic thinking. So I think those 3 elements for me says that things bode well for Ivy Tech, and I'm just interested in going forward and learning more about how you take those different systems and actually create the alignment, not just obviously with workforce, but how you align that major system, because it seems like it's one of those win opportunities that if you can do it, and I'm confident you can, that's where you begin to get a lot of the transformation you're seeking throughout, I mean, statewide. But just Godspeed to you. Thank you for the presentation.
Oh, thank you, Dennis. That's very thoughtful. Well, it will happen, but it will be that group behind me and the thousands of other Ivy Tech faculty and staff who will make it happen, and we'll use people like Micah along the way with her great thinking as well. So thank you for the opportunity, and please, anything that my commitment is transparency, so if there is information you need from us or would like to have from us, please ask. We'll most assuredly get it your way. Thank you.
Sue, I think,
No, that's
sorry. Teresa had a,
Okay.
It's hard not to end up on a high like that.
well, you can,
Well, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I think you can see you have a full spirit of partnership from the commission, and that we understand that we cannot get to any of our attainment goals, or more importantly than a goal, really what's behind those numbers without Ivy Tech being successful. So I rarely make a comment about a capital request, but I will say, having been on the Kokomo campus, and as some of you have as well, that the needs for Kokomo are just incredible. And so if you haven't had a chance, in the spirit of having an equal opportunity on campuses across, Kokomo it needs some help in that regard. So my only word of caution as we move forward would be my concern a little bit about the students' expected time to completion. And I mentioned this not because we don't recognize the complexity of students' lives when they go there, but the challenge, of course, is how do we accept those and at the same time remove the obstacles for more
Correct.
timely completion?
Agreed.
And in that regard, from just a financial standpoint, we know that financial aid is going to run out for those students in 4 years. We know that if they're not taking, even as a part-time student, 18 credits a year, they get no financial, they're not going to, their financial aid is being challenged. So in that regard, I think it's incumbent on us to actually try to get more timely completion. While lives are complicated, the benefits that they will accrue will be postponed until they complete. And so whatever we
Agreed.
can do to work with you to, when students say, my life is complicated, I hope our answer will be, what can we do to help
Correct.
you graduate more quickly?
Correct. We will encourage at every turn for them to complete more quickly, but not more quickly than is healthy for them. So so it's fine line, and I think that's why I'm really not asking the commission today to adopt our metric, but I think we have to measure our metric so we can learn from it and find out what it is, what is that time frame, why is it that time frame, and what might we be able to accelerate in it? But if we just say everybody in 2, and that's what we're going to measure, and that's not real. So we need to be somewhere in between those 2 points.
Sometimes we say 3, not 8, or 3, not 10.
So we'll work on that one together, and hopefully we'll discover those best metrics as we go forward. Thank you. And
Great presentation. Thank you so much to
Thank
you
you,
and
Dan.
all your colleagues.
Thank you.
So. All right, so that completes the major portion of today's meeting. We have a couple other items of business and we need to run through. So looking at the academic degree component of our agenda, we have 7 academic degree programs on the agenda, as you will see in your paperwork. They're listed in the agenda book beginning on page 11. I would entertain a motion for approval. Thank you, John. Second by Jerry. Thank you. Any comments or questions on any of the programs for expedited action?
I actually do have two quick comments in regards to items 16-23 and 16-25. I am not against approval, but I did want to highlight that both of these do not have the transfers of courses from Ivy Tech, and, to President Ellspermann's comment earlier, the fact that some of these courses and these programs are getting approved without having the transferability or the articulation agreements in place raised a little bit of a red flag for me. So I just wanted to ask whether that is something that we are requiring.
Should talk to Ken.
Ken, you want to respond to that, if you would, please?
Well, whenever a baccalaureate or associate degree comes forward, we always ask the question about transferability. And there are situations in which, on the associate degree side, it is appropriate to put together a program that is an associate of applied science, which is not designed specifically to transfer. Many of the courses in the program will transfer individually, but it's not designed as a package. I think as the college develops this program, this is, of course, the first time it has ever been offered.
Right.
It would be offered. I think there would be some opportunity to look at some options, but from at least the staff standpoint, we don't have a problem with recommending this as an associate of applied science at this point.
But then would we somehow put this in some sort of ticker file to come back and revisit in a year and see if they've achieved some sort of level where they can, or do we just
No, that's
revisit?
certainly a possibility, and especially, given the expression of interest in this particular point,
Right.
definitely we can take another look at that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's, Ken, as long as you were at the podium, just a quick question. On item number 6, it's Vincennes University Associates of Science and Legal Studies.
Yes.
It says changing the name of a program, so I was just curious, what was it called? And I'm just curious, what is an Associate of Science and Legal Studies going to allow someone to do?
Well, this is basically a sort of a paralegal, somebody to function as a paralegal, and
So this is a
could
paralegal? This is paralegal?
As I understand it, yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I just was, then, I get a paralegal degree. I guess I just don't know what a Associate of Science and Legal Studies means.
It would also provide somebody to have opportunities to move into sort of criminal justice positions. I mean, it's a little broader than that. And in all honesty, I can't tell you what it was called previously, but it certainly seemed like a pretty, basic name change. Generally, it didn't change the nature of the program at all.
I think this does point out that, the process that we have for routine and expedited or discussion have been aligned in a way that, as Kim mentioned earlier, the good news is we can move things along and the committees consider them. The challenge is that unless you've had a chance to engage in these, then there may be questions. What I would encourage you to do whenever possible is to raise those questions with us prior to the time that we come. I know it's not always possible, but if you can, because it then gives us the opportunity to go back, because an expedited doesn't give us the opportunity to bring people forward from the schools for discussion. So whenever possible, an expedited item, if either on a capital or with an academic. And I know it's hard because you have so many of them, and we basically rely on our committees to do a lot of that. But there will be times when something is flagged to you when you see it, and we will always be willing, and we would even be willing to bring it to a full discussion if there's an issue that you raise that you think it needs to come to that point. But we sort of have to know that in advance, or else we can't answer questions.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval of the 7 items for expedited action, academic programs for expedited action, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Okay, thank you. They are approved. We now have 5 capital projects on the agenda for expedited action. Same process, listed beginning on page 17. Can I have a motion for approval of those items?
Second.
Thank you, thank you. Any comments or questions on capital projects? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same? All right. Those are approved as well. Let's see, you can find information items beginning on page 21 of your book. Is there any old or new business to discuss that are not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, I will call this meeting to a close and adjourn it. We, just as a reminder, our next commission meeting will be on November 10th in Evansville, Indiana. So everyone have a great rest of the day. This meeting is adjourned.